It's Tuesday, October 26th, and you're listening to the Beer Temple Podcast.
Remember, this is what we wanted. Remember, this is what we said. To never be heard or seen from again. Remember, this is what we wanted. Remember, this is what we said. To never be heard or seen from again.
Hello, and welcome to the Beer Temple. You know what it is, Beer Temple Podcast. And sorry, I just couldn't deal with the fade, but I'm your host. Nonetheless, Chris Quinn. I am joined by my co-host Mike Shalal. We are in Studio BT at the Beer Temple with Fade Master Surge. Just the two of us. On mic.
Three of us.
On mic.
That's right.
And
it's going to be a singing episode.
It's going to be an all-singing episode. It's going to be a musical episode. It's going to be a mailbag episode is what we're doing this time. So we're going to get into that for a bit, but we've had a bunch of written letters. I'm looking at 5 written letters here, although a couple we've already read. And then I've got a bunch of emails as well, and at the rate we were going, I was not going to be able to get through all of them in even nearly a fair amount of time. But thanks so much to everyone who's been sending in the letters. So we're going to spend it'll be a grab bag, a mailbag
episode.
Yeah, absolutely. But before we get into that, I wanted to see what's up with you, Mike. How's it going?
It's good. You know, not too much going on.
Okay.
Not too much I can talk about.
Oh.
Some secret stuff going on.
Oh, secret things.
Secret potential things may be going on possibly.
Got it. Okay. Maybe possible secret potential.
A lot of...
that's a lot of qualifiers.
That's right. Yeah. A lot of, irons in the fire, but nothing's heated up.
But nothing's hot.
Yeah.
Everything's ice cold still.
Yeah. A lot of branches into the future.
A lot of ins, a lot of outs,
yeah,
a lot of what have yous.
Exactly. Yeah. Great podcasting. Sorry about that.
Yeah. Uh-huh. No, it's okay.
What about you? What's new with you?
Well, it's funny you should ask. I have a question for you, and I thought you might be able to help me on air. So we do a lot of virtual tastings, right? I mean, we're sitting in boxes. Yeah. It's amazing how quickly this place goes from cleaned up to an absolute shithole. It's also Studio BT. But I wanted
Get your notebook out. Sir.
Right. But so we do beer tastings, we do whiskey tastings and stuff like that.
Yeah.
And sometimes we're double booked, right? And for beer tastings, that's not too difficult. For whiskey tastings, it's becoming an issue, okay?
Yeah.
And I am trying to see if I can become comfortable with hosting whiskey tastings. And I think the reality is I could probably do it and be just fine, but I wouldn't feel comfortable myself doing it. So, like, in my own comfort knowledge, I'd be worried that, like, if it's a beer tasting and somebody stumps me, I know that it's like either
question that no one else is going to know.
It's a tough question that can at least give some sort of answer to. At least I don't know. You know, it wouldn't be one of those things.
Yeah, you have the confidence to say, if I don't know it, then there's
here's the thing. Here's this and this and this. But as to the exact reason of X, Y, and Z, I'm not sure. You know, and with whiskey, that's definitely not the case.
Sure.
So I've started to take some time to educate myself on whiskey, which sounds like it's just drinking a lot of whiskey. It isn't. Probably as much as it should be, frankly. But it's a lot of, for me, reading and just trying to find places of value. So for those of you who may not know, I mean, Mike knows, to me, I would say, a lot about whiskey. I mean, bourbon especially. You know a lot about
I think I did at one point.
I knew you were going to say that. I almost qualified it by saying, and he'll say I did, but
yeah, I mean, it was a big part of my life and a huge part of my job for a period there, and it was something that I genuinely enjoyed. So I got really into it and into how it tastes the way it tastes, why it tastes the way it tastes, the history of it.
And you taught me a good bit about bourbon. Sometimes, sometimes at 2 a.m, and sometimes, at a less reasonable time. And
I think the round table might have come out of one of our classes, if we
probably.
Where we were talking about how we should have conversations like this, but on a podcast.
Right. I mean, it sounds like it. It sounds like something we would say. But so yeah, I mean, it was a big part of your life. Obviously, you have quite the collection. You were the first person whose bourbon collection I ever saw where I was like, I have no idea what this stuff is, but I know this stuff has a lot of meaning to this guy. And you're like, pick anyone you want. And I picked one, and you're like, you picked the best one in the whole thing. It was W.L. Weller.
That's everyone.
And I think it was.
Well, yeah. So I still have quite a collection of that, of a bourbon, but I haven't purchased any bourbon in probably like 5 years.
Well, I mean, it's like the thing. It's like with people who collect beer, but only more so because, I mean, it's just that much harder to go through an entire bottle, and you just collect, and soon you have more than a lifetime supply. I mean, I probably already have a lifetime supply of whiskey,
right?
But I guess that's also not the point that you're going to finish all of it.
Well, there's also a tipping point where it goes from being an approachable, fun way to experience the world, right? You experience the way that things taste, and that is a shared experience I can have with you, and then we can talk about this physical thing. And then you start seeing the prices of stuff on like secondary markets, and you start seeing the price of stuff on like the initial like way you want to buy it, just like go crazy for bourbon. So I was like working at liquor stores when I started getting into it.
It would come in.
It would come in. I would be able to grab it first, and then that stopped being able to happen. And then I stopped being able to access it. And then when I would find it, or someone like one of my friends who still worked at liquor stores, like we have it, it'd be like 3 or 4 times what I had anchored the price at in my head. And then I would have stuff on my shelf that I would be like, what is this? And I would look it up and be like, oh no, that's like 2 rent payments. And I just wanted to experience it. And then you start questioning yourself. And so honestly, all that, like, I guess baggage was like, I'm like, I don't want to be a part of this part of it anymore. I still love the way it tastes. I really enjoy like sharing it with people, but I couldn't be part of like the chase or the game and because I kind of was out of that, I haven't updated my knowledge as such.
Yeah.
But I still have what I had then. I just don't know how accurate it is for. And part of the fun for me was being like, this Elmer T. Lee in Chicago at the time was like $28 a bottle, and I'm like, this is fantastic stuff. And like I trained my palate to the point where I'm like, oh, I can spot the deal, and be like, well, Weller 12 was such a great deal because it was $32 a bottle, and it was full 12 years old, and it was like might have supposedly been the same juice that they were using to make Pappy Van Winkle, which is a partial truth. But for $32, you're like, yeah, every day of the week at like 57 or when you can find it or whatever it is now, I'm like, that's not worth that.
Well, that's the thing. I mean, if you can find it,
right?
Yeah, and I think it goes for over 100. Yeah.
Yeah, that's how far out I haven't bought one.
It's ridiculous.
One of my friends at a restaurant in a far out suburb knew I really liked that, and he got a 1.5 liter bottle.
Nice.
And gave it to me.
Of which one?
Weller 12.
Nice.
So I've been pouring that into my 750 milliliter bottle, putting that on the shelf, and putting the other one back in the closet as I finish it. Otherwise I wouldn't even know. And honestly, I don't know what Weller 12 now tastes like. I know what the one I have tastes like, but doesn't necessarily mean the one that's out there right now.
I just pulled up Weller 12 and then just went to the shopping link on Google. So there's places, I won't say which one's which, but like Bottle Buzz, Wooden Cork, Bourbon Central, Caskers, Wilson Spirits, Cask Cartel, Wooden Cork, And yeah, where else? Okay, so let's look at the prices. So for Weller 12, it's now 320, 350, 344, 499, 1,570, 329. This is the cheapest I've seen, 225.
So 57 was way off, huh?
Yeah. So, and the crazy stuff is like the old Weller 12 that used to come in like the bubbly bottle, which is the last one I bought. That's
what does it look like now?
Well, remember when it used to look like kind of real bubbly? Remember when it used to look
That's
like
what
that?
I have.
Yeah. Well, now it looks like that.
Oh, yeah, I guess
That
I
bubbly.
did know
Yeah,
that.
you knew that, right?
I haven't bought one since it looked like that.
Right.
What are the old ones going for?
Over a G. It looks
Okay,
like.
so I need to find like the cap they used and buy the brand
Exactly.
new cap, fill that back up, and pay my rent.
And just put little dabs of glue on the little where the little seams meet on the little aluminum.
Yeah, buy one that still has the tear thing off.
Right, exactly. So anyway,
Fun to the brewery.
so that's no fun. But anyway,
No.
yeah, Weller 12. I mean, I've had that whiskey for a while. I mean, I remember when you could buy that. That used to be the only bourbon we had at the beer temple. We used to buy it case at a time.
Yeah.
2 cases at a time. And, we'd have any bourbon. I was like, we have this one. And because we really like it and it's a great value.
Right.
And then that went away. And now I think we get like 1 bottle a year of it or something insane.
I think in
But that's not really what I want. I don't want to talk about too much about
yeah.
that. We could go down.
That could be the
you
entire
and I
episode.
can complain until the cows come home.
With the best of them.
Yeah. But I will say, yeah, now's not the best time to get into stuff if you're looking to hunt, because it's definitely a seller's market right now. It's in huge demand. Bourbon is probably in whiskey the hottest category, and
Possibly in alcohol.
yeah, possibly in alcohol. I would say Scotch isn't there, but it's starting to catch up. And there's always been a little bit of exclusivity there, with like these special offerings that they would put out. It looks like Canadian stuff isn't quite there yet, which is awesome. I was just telling you about a 43-year-old Canadian whiskey that I brought in that I thought was like, I just want to try it. And it was at a price where I could just be like, yeah, 43-year-old.
Right.
Yes, I will buy it just because it's 43 years old and I want to see what that's like.
Right.
But
That's fun.
yeah, so other than just doing that, seeing stuff and being like, okay, I can afford it, I can try it. So what I'll say what I've been doing, and then I just want to know, like, if you have any recommendations on how to slowly build up your chops or places to look at or things to do, anything like that. Going on social media is useful to see what people are talking about, which is valuable. What people care about, what's being discussed by those influencer geeks who are the very tip of the iceberg, so to speak, tip of the spear, I guess is what it is. So,
Sure.
but then knowing, me being me, I immediately buy history books on bourbon, and I want to build up from the foundation, and I just want to learn where all these families came from, how they came to be, where these names came from, how the spirit came to be. So that's what I've been doing, and it's been amazingly rewarding. I've really liked this book that I'm currently reading about bourbon, which is I like way more than I thought.
Which book are you reading?
It is called, I think, Bourbon Empire.
Okay, I don't think I read that one.
I think it's fairly recent, but it's from I think a guy who writes about spirits in Whiskey Advocate in the Atlantic and other places. So he's like an actual author and can write well and can put a story together and stuff like that.
Which is not the case with all of the books on whiskey I've found. I've
read
some where it's like, man, I think that this is like the second draft maybe.
Right.
And you were consuming the thing you were writing about probably while you composed this sentence.
Yeah. But this is this guy's first book. It's called Bourbon Empire.
Cool.
But anyway, it's so this one starts with like the Whiskey Rebellion in colonial America, or I guess newly not colonial America, and
Right.
And kind of goes from there. Very interesting. All the origin stories, and this guy said it from the get-go. He's like, they're all BS. They've always been BS. So the fact that they're BS now isn't different. It's part of the tradition at this point, is
Right.
to make BS stories about, or embellishments to these
Right.
characters, where the memory fades and the history just isn't quite there. And that little gap is
Right.
like where they create these legends. And all these people, like Elijah Craig inventing bourbon, they're like, it's not true.
Right.
And he didn't, his recipe, it's like nobody has his recipe, and it was a commodity spirit back then. There were no brands, there were no anything like that back then, so his recipe wasn't really a thing.
Right.
But that doesn't make for a good story,
Right. That's also funny now in this day and age. Do you remember that Templeton lawsuit?
I thought about that. I thought about that while reading this book, which is where, it wasn't really the whiskey of Al Capone or whatever.
Right.
It was.
But that's it's part of the lineage of spirits in America.
Yeah.
And someone now who got into it and just bought into that and believed it, filed a class action lawsuit against, I don't know what it turned, it was Templeton, right?
Yeah.
I don't know what the result of it was, but it is
Definitely egg on the face of Templeton, but
probably yes, but it's indicative of where that the consumption and purchase of those spirits are at, where someone would be so embarrassed and offended to have been taken for a little bit of a ride like that they would file a class action lawsuit.
Right.
I
mean, like Bullet has the very old-timey looking bottle,
right,
that's kind of embossed and has
right,
the little stuck-on old-fashioned label, and apparently it even made an appearance in Deadwood. It's a very brand new brand.
Right. I've met Tom Bullitt,
and
very nice guy.
Yeah, and it's sourced from Indiana stuff.
Yeah, I don't know if it is anymore.
Well, yeah, it was up until recently anyway. Yeah.
Most of
or
that
maybe the
stuff
rye is, or whatever. But
most of the best rye you've ever had comes from Indiana.
Yeah,
and from the same place.
Yeah, and a lot of that stuff, how it's all controlled by essentially. I think 9 distilleries make 97% of the distillate in the U.S.
Right. And it's also one of those things. I think we've probably gotten far afield from what we were going to talk about again. But
yeah, but we're about to get to where I wanted.
It's one of those things where the big guys are still probably going to make the best versions of it, because it's not a freshness issue and it's not a vision issue for these guys are doing it wrong. It's that if you have 10,000 barrels. The law of large numbers essentially says that you're going to have more likelihood of having fantastic barrels. You're also going to have more likelihood of being able to blend something that's really cheap and really delicious. And that's part of when I got out of it is I'm it's not that bad. A lot of the cheaper stuff,
right,
it's getting more expensive, but it's and I don't see a way to connect with the craft version of these as much as I want to. For the price points and for what my palate wanted. And so I'm I don't know if I can really justify the increase in the stuff that I want to drink or that I find fancifully fun, not just it tastes good, so I'm going to drink it. Just thought the story's great. That stuff got real expensive real fast.
Yeah.
So I'm I can't do this.
Yeah, yeah. And I've yet to ever plunk down a lot of money for a bourbon either. I tend to go to I have plunked down a lot of money for bourbon, just not to take home. I buy it in the least efficient way possible, which is at a bar.
Yeah, like Mike Miller telling us fanciful stories about it.
And us loving it.
Yeah, eating it up. And honestly, I prefer that now.
Yeah.
Because it is actually a more cost-efficient way to get what I want out of it. I don't have to buy a $200 or $400 or $2,000 bottle. I do have to buy like a $75, $100, $150 2 ounces, but I only have to spend that once. And what I really want is that experience. I don't need to have access to that experience at all points and have that sitting on my shelf. The like guilt and the like the struggle of like, I want this to drink it, but I know that people will pay a lot of money for it if I don't open it. It's like toys, the collectible toys. Like I want to play with the toy. I don't care if I'm going to devalue it. So,
Right.
So I'm not the right person to be buying expensive bourbon anymore.
But how anything other than what I've just mentioned that you would recommend, or if I did mention it, maybe specific places online to look, or
I've never bought anything online.
No, I didn't mean to buy, just to educate.
To learn. I don't even know if the ones that I went to exist anymore. There is Sour Mash Scientist or something like that. That would like when he wasn't a scientist, he was like drinking stuff.
Yeah. Another a lore. He wove a lore about himself.
Yeah.
Like he was a scientist. He's really a drunk.
If you're just getting into it, I would first look up the distilleries and their brands, because you won't figure out that like Buffalo Trace makes all these different brands, but that most of them don't say Buffalo Trace or like what Wild Turkey's got going on. So figure out what comes from these houses.
I've got a decent understanding. I'll be pretty solid on that. I'd say like literally in a week. I'm pretty good just from buying.
There's
for the store, like you see who the reps are and you see who's in their book. And
I don't know how accurate it is anymore, but I have a poster from Kings County Distilling, which I think is actually a distillery in New York, but they're not even on the poster. It's just it's like a bourbon family tree where it starts with the distillery and then it shows you all the expressions that they make. It's not all of them anymore, and I'm sure it's not accurate anymore, but the height of the tree and where the branch came off would be the age statement on it.
Oh, interesting.
So it's a very cool poster I had that I actually learned a lot from looking at. But it also allows you to go and drink the cheaper expressions that these individual houses make, and then you can see which of those you like. And then it's not guaranteed, but it's more likely if you want to go and invest more money in a more expensive bottle, you'll probably like older versions of that as well.
Yeah.
There's some things where that doesn't work exactly like linearly like that. There's some older stuff that doesn't age particularly well, and there's some stuff that gets really good as it gets older, but that's a good rule of thumb if you're not trying to spend too much money and you're just going to be a retail investor of whiskey. Is just to like, you're not going to try to buy stuff online that's thousands of dollars. You're just going to go to the store and you want to like educate yourself. Start with the cheaper stuff and see which of that you actually like, and it's then probably likely that you'll like the more expensive expressions of that family's bourbon or that distillery's bourbon expressions, because it's not like brewing where every different beer is a different distinct and unique recipe. There's only a handful of mash bills that any of these have, except Four Roses is a really cool one to look at. They have a bunch of yeast strains and stuff too, but there's only a handful of mash bills, and so then it's just time, place in the warehouse, and barrel, and that's typically how they come up with brands, is by how they blend those different aspects of it. Yeah. So if you like the cheaper versions of it, you'll probably like the more expensive versions of it. I'm not sure if that's the question you were asking.
No. That's good enough. Okay. I would just wanted to throw it out there and see what you had to say.
Yeah. That's how I did it, at least. I also had an emotional connection to Elijah Craig because we were using their barrels a lot. And so I drank everything.
They make great stuff.
Yeah, they're fantastic. I mean, they're also a massive distillery, right? That's Heaven Hill. And so when we were talking with Mike last week, they were using mostly Heaven Hill barrels because there were a lot of Heaven Hill barrels. And there was a crazy guy that had a connection to get them the way that brewers want them. And so that's why we were using them. They're the most consistently, most fresh. And I know there's different opinions on this, but I preferred older barrels to a certain extent when I was aging beer in bourbon barrels. So being able to consistently get 12-year-old barrels was quite a difference than getting 4-year-old barrels.
Right. Probably a little harder now to get 12-year-old barrels.
It's almost impossible.
They don't even make Elijah Craig 12.
No, there's still like 9 to 11. You can tell by like the date coding on them. They won't tell you exactly, but you can decipher the codes of when they were filled. I know that
of the barrels, but not of the bottle you buy at the shop.
Yeah.
The age statement is gone.
Age statement's gone. Yeah. I actually have one thing that I have a lot of still in my whiskey collection is different iterations of Elijah Craig as they phased out the 12.
That's cool.
So they stopped printing the front label at a big red 12 on it. So I still have.
I remember you could find it on the back.
So I have one that has the big red 12 on the front that is probably about half full, and then I have one that's on the back as well. And then there's one that doesn't have it on either, but was during a time when all of the barrels we were still getting were 12 years old. So I bought one at that time knowing that it was likely to be 12 years old, and then I have one that's just definitely not 12 years old. And then they changed the bottle, so I have a couple different ones. So I have a lot of Elijah Craig and a lot of Heaven Hill Expressions, and that's I haven't drank a lot of them recently, but that's how I now connect with it, is that these have like personal history for me.
Yeah, that's cool.
Yeah.
Well, thank you. Thank you very much.
So create your own personal history with a with a whiskey.
Yeah.
And that's
head up a barrel program.
Right. I mean, that's how a lot of this stuff works, though, right? When you start out, you're kind of swimming in an abyss that you don't really understand, and then if you stick with it, you develop your own personal understanding of it, and then you can decide what you like and what you don't like, and have your own personal connections with things.
To me, I mean, the way what I love is when you get to the point where you see the forest, because for a while you're identifying trees and then species of trees and then types of trees, and like, oh, I know this section, I know this and this. And then when you can step out and put the places where they are and kind of see the whole landscape somewhat, at least, that's always the most fun, because then you can think for yourself, you can think creatively, you can within that space.
Sorry, go ahead.
And which is where I think you and I are both definitely there with beer in different ways, you know.
Certainly.
And it's nice because then you can really, think creatively may sound like an interest, like a funny way to put it, but it is how you can interpret things and look at things a different way and kind of take it and revolve it and look at it from the underside and stuff like that once you understand what's going on.
And in a world where we so externalized knowledge or data to it's all on your phone, you don't know anyone's phone numbers, like the ability to have some sort of understanding of the interconnectivity of something like bourbon or the way things taste or the things you like, and that only you can really access, right? I can't Google what is my favorite bourbon, but I can answer that question. So having these things that are kind of like not off the grid, but like that you create your own internal algorithm for finding the things you like. And the only way to do that is really through experience of having it and thinking about it and contemplating it. And so I think that's both of what we've done incidentally with beer. Certainly what I did for a while with bourbon. I think that's part of it, right? It's just engaging with it in responsible ways.
It's true, engage in responsible ways.
Or irresponsible
and take what you've
We're
learned.
not saying you should do that, disclaimer.
Well, and take what you've learned in, for me in the beer category, and I've dabbled in, other areas as well with wine and stuff like that. And you start to see that there are similarities in the culture of things, I would say, more than anything. Right. Like with ratings, for example, it's like, unless you can identify with someone who rates, who you trust and like their opinion,
right,
then it's only worth so much. I will say back in the day, we're going way off the rails now, with Beer Advocate, when that was the rating place of choice in America anyway, there were some incredibly prolific raters. And if you found some that you liked and you agreed with what they said, it was very valuable. Yeah. It was very valuable to have someone who took good notes, you trusted their palate, and could identify what they liked or didn't like about it based off what reading a review.
Right.
Rather than just a score or a listicle that came out from, I don't know, BuzzFeed or whatever it is.
We're so culturally removed from the idea of gatekeepers like that anymore. that we forget there was utility and value in them. And we think that because we've democratized the ratings on beer or on whiskey, that it's like, oh yeah, it's better in some way, but it's oddly way less personal because everyone's numbers are just getting thrown into the average or the bottle caps or whatever we were joking about, on the draft. And so you get no individual's input really. You just get the output of everything, and that's it's different. It's like if you going to Rotten Tomatoes and just looking at the Rotten Tomatoes score versus like I love listening to this podcast called Film Spotting, and I like their opinions, and like I'm much more likely going to like something that they say they like than has a high rating on Rotten Tomatoes. So
I just wanted to look up like some of my favorite beers on Untapped and see what they were rated.
Just from that Doug tweet, did you see that? His thing recently?
He's been on a bit of a rampage about IPAs, and he says that we've declared IPA dead, which I disagree. I don't think I've declared them dead. But anyway, moving on from that. So what is a bad rating on Untapped? I don't even know. Or what's a ho-hum rating?
I mean, it depends.
You know? I don't.
It depends, I guess. I mean, what would
for an IPA?
For an IPA, I don't have any idea. I would imagine like a 3.8 would be something that people would be like, meh.
So Headhunter, is
3.73,
3.96.
That's good.
Is it 3.96? Okay, so it's under a 4.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think anything that gets made as often as that gets made is going to be over a 4. What's like Pliny? Like I think anything where you could be like someone who has
Two Hearted is 3.962, the exact not 3.962, but also
as well. Yeah.
So it's exactly the same. Rating. What if Pliny was also 3.9? 4.5. That's really high.
That's insanely high. Never mind. That's my theory is proven wrong.
What's another mass produced
amalgamator?
I don't know if that's.
I guess it's not mass produced.
4.04, so a little bit higher. But then, what's Julius? What's my favorite beer of all time? Yeah, Main Lunch is a good one. Julius, regular Julius, and they go up from there. 4.5, and they go up from there. But Main Lunch,
like the best rated beer I've made anywhere.
4.18. 4.18.
Yeah.
That's a solid. It's a great. So Fatheads IPA. Until I taste one I like more, it's officially my favorite IPA. Mm-hmm. I will declare that right now on the air. It is my favorite.
You've been dancing
IPA.
Around it for a while.
I have, because I was waiting. I mean, I would say, that and Amalgamator are kind of my two favorite, but I had them side by side. Amalgamator was fresh. Fathead, someone brought one in that was screaming fresh. Also, a wet hopped version of it, which was awesome. Woo! Yeah, it was great. It was just, it wasn't quite as West Coast. It had a little bit of that chewiness that Two Hearted and Alpha King have going on.
Malt backbone that people always say, oh, it's got a nice malt backbone.
But it has just enough, and then the hops are just screaming. And they're the Headhunter too has such a weird that dank, super dank, and very got that chivy thing going on. Some people say onion. Which it's great. I love it. Well, I absolutely love it.
Those things are fantastic as part of a whole, and also they're balance points, right?
Right.
Fruit is wonderful, but if all you eat is fruit, then fruit is cloying, and fruit is kind of boring.
Right.
So, if you're all your hopping things with are fruity things, and what do you do next? Oh, there's pine. There's the allium thing you can get from those, and those make things drinkable. And I don't mean that in that I can finish a pint of them, but I can drink regularly. Have a couple of those, and I think that's cool. I think that's a thing that isn't missing, but isn't dominant in the IPA world anymore. I think it used to be a dominant thing because hops didn't exist without those characteristics.
Yeah.
Or there was no maybe Sister existed, but it wasn't that there were like 4 or 5 hops that were just straight juicy, fruity hops.
There's just a ton going on with them. I also think, yeah, I mean, it's funny we're saying, oh, there's like nice malt sweetness that goes to it, but then we complain about how all the IPAs are sweet, nowadays too. So it is funny, but it's both. It's a balance point. It's
Well, there's a difference between sugar and like perceived sweetness for that balance. Like, there's no doubt in my mind that Headhunter is drier than most of the beers that we're like alluding to.
Yeah.
But that it has less, like chewy body and is more focused on that perceived sweetness to balance it out rather than like thickness or
with 2 C's.
Yeah.
Well, we'll have to have Doug on here to show us the error of our ways. Why don't we take a little bit of a break, and then we'll come back and actually do what letters. We talked about we were going to do, which is read some letters.
Welcome back to the Beer Temple Podcast. I'm your co-host, Mike Shalau. I'm here with my other co-host, Chris Glynn.
Yep, me.
From the Beer Temple, and Fademaster Surge.
Yep.
We intended this to be a mailbag episode, and yet the first 30, 35 minutes were about my insecurities around saying I know a lot about whiskey.
But we do have a lot of letters. I will say we're not going to get all of these. Some of these I did already read, like this one from Glen Ellen, Illinois.
Jack.
But just looking, we've got ones that have come in from Oregon, from Ohio. I think that one's from Missouri, right?
This one is from Kansas City, Missouri.
Yeah, and it's just really cool that I know the emails also come in from across the country, but it's cool to think that letter was written, like we got one from Hawaii one time, which is pretty awesome. And so I just want to say it's very, very cool, and we appreciate it very much. And I'm sorry I have the list of all the people that I need to send shirts to, so I will be getting all of that stuff out. So feel free, if you haven't already, to email us with your shirt size and stuff like that, and if you have a preference in shirt. So and you can get the address and our email address in the show notes. Look at that. I could have just said that all along. Unbelievable.
Yeah, they would have cut out about 10 minutes out of each show, though.
Unbelievable. So
great. Well, we've got a lovely letter here. I haven't actually read it, but I hope it's lovely. From Eddie D. in Kansas City, Missouri. He says, hello. From handwritten on notebook paper with the perforations still attached.
Still on. I almost pulled them off because of my, I'm not OCD, but that's one of the things I like to...
Yeah, clean things up.
I was like, no,
it's a great
the original form.
It's a great artifact. Hello from Kansas City, Missouri. I'm a very long-time listener, but first time writing in. I believe I heard about the Beer Temple through John Rubio in the early days of the Beerists podcast. John would talk a lot about the Beer Temple, Half Acre Beers, and the Beer Temple Insiders Roundtable. I believe there were 4 or 5 episodes recorded and uploaded before I became aware. So that's like he took quite a while to really get in there. I would like to take the opportunity to thank you for all the content. Oh, thank you. My beer knowledge has grown 80-fold, possibly 90-fold. Those are very specific numbers. I long to live in the land where King and Queen Kona rule and coconuts are plenty. The Zombie Dust Radio Hour is podcasting at its finest.
There you see.
That's the end of. No, I'm just kidding. There's a lot more.
The rest is just about the Zombie Dust Radio Hour, right? I mean, that's...
it should be.
It should be. Now, that's a reference that's probably, 3 years old at this point?
Oh, man. I've erased it from my mind.
That's another thing. For all those little, things that we would do, it still gets called back. I mean...
it went on quite a while.
Still gets called back. Yeah, but that was forever ago.
Right. It's also most people are usually very nice to me, and the only time people have been mean to me is about how bad they thought that was.
But that's awesome.
I love
that.
Dave Hawley. The actual reason why I'm writing in is because in the relaunch, you have talked about how beer experiences have shaped your lives, your views on beer, how being around people sharing beer heightens your enjoyment, and so on. I'd love to share with you some of my favorite beer experiences. I'm an outlier because I'm going to say some of my best experiences are alone, in all caps. Not
Remember,
like huge,
because
but
this is
it's
when we
alone.
were talking about how I said, everyone think about your favorite drinking experience. I bet you were with someone.
So this
weren't
person's
you?
saying you were wrong, Chris.
He's saying and he's an outlier, or maybe I'm an outlier. I just didn't know it.
Maybe everyone on the show is outliers.
Maybe
Very
everybody
likely everyone on the
is
show
just-
is some sort of outlier.
That's true, probably.
And he writes, here is why. Imagine this. A Missouri countryside.
In a world.
Yeah. You are sitting in a comfortable patio chair outside looking out at acres of mowed grass. Around you is cone flowers? I don't know what that is. Stone crops, peonies, astilbe, A-S-T-I-L-B-E.
Just say something. Just say a word.
I thought I was trying to create a mood and I ruined it. Growing and surrounding the patio. In the near distance is an herb garden, and in the further distance is a blackberry patch and some sunflowers. In front of you on the patio table is a salad of greens and feta and berries, and your glass is La Vermontois or Cuvée de Jonquil or Trefontaine and A&G.
This guy's got good taste.
This is my man. Breathe in the smells of the vinaigrette, the berries, wild grain, glass, and you hear nothing but bees and birds. In any other circumstance, I would agree. I want and crave lively conversation over pint after pint of lager or two-hearted. Wow, this guy's great. But I love isolation when I drink Saison/Lambic. Thank you for giving encouragement to write in. I apologize for the awful handwriting. Your handwriting is actually great. I am a size XL.
Nice.
I love Iswa's beer and black clothes.
There you go.
Best regards, Eddie. Should I say his last name? He wrote it there. We'll say Eddie. Eddie D.
Eddie D.
Eddie, thank you. That is
What a great letter.
Wonderful.
So cool. So we have to write somewhere on there or on the envelope.
Well, how many
XL.
XL? Do you got any dust shirts left? I think that's the only black piece of merch that from his
Right.
that exists. Everything else is like
or
gold.
methode. We might have a methode dust.
That's what I was talking. Oh yeah.
Dust and dust.
Dust and dust and dust.
Yeah.
You want to be right on XL?
It is funny. Those are the ones that we like. They sell very slowly. So, but there are ones where people come in and they're like, "I want a dust shirt." And I'm like, "What size?" Don't have that anymore. All right, I want a methode dust shirt. And I was like, okay, I know where you're, I know where you're coming from. So. Amazing. You painted an amazing picture because I was imagining an experience I had when I was sitting on a farmhouse porch in upstate Vermont. I was just outside of Hill Farm. I had gone up there by myself after Shelton Fest and went up to Hill Farm. They were not open that day, but I, was meeting up with Sean Hill. I don't think I'd ever met him, but Christina from Westlake View Liquors had made the introduction enough so that I could go there and I don't even know if I had a place to stay, but thought there was a place around. I had maybe gotten a couple emails or two.
You were going to try to crash on Sean Hill's couch?
No. I was going to be best friends. I was going to ask him to be my best man in my upcoming wedding by the end of the, which is so funny. I mean, say what you will, so many people are they do have that fantasy of when they meet a celebrity or something, he's going to really like me.
Yeah.
I've given up on that mostly
because you've met them and they have not liked you.
Yes, exactly. It was that one time I met Matthew McConaughey, and it just all went wrong.
He seemed so chill.
I know. He was so uptight and tense.
You were not there. Yeah, you were not there for the green lights. That
yeah, it was not all right. You know,
not all right. Not all right.
no,
not
but
all right.
no, I realized that that's just like the reality is like you know. Who knows if I would want to be friends with these people either?
Right.
Like, I don't want to be friends.
You're
with
friends
these
with
people.
a very sellable image of them.
Right. But anyway, so I went up there, and it was we stayed up there for like 2 days, solid day and a half anyway.
At Sean Hill's house.
No, at the brewery, which was like right. It was before the big expansion, so it was it was after the first expansion. So it used to be a shed.
Yeah.
And then it became like a legit mini brewery that was right there. There was like a counter where you could buy beer, and literally just next to it was his brew system. He would be right there. Had you been there when it was like that?
No, I've only been once.
Oh, okay. So it was like if I'm here checking out, he was at that door right there brewing beer. No walls, no windows. It was not ideal for him, and I would imagine. But anyway, there was nobody there, just him and your boy, Dan Suarez, who was the brewer there. So they were the only two. No, there was also that guy Bob, but anyway, now I'm going off the friggin' rails. But he said, "Oh, there's this farmhouse where you can stay for the night," and they rented out rooms, and it was a gigantic Victorian Vermont.
There's some cool stuff.
Yeah, like house out there on this like rolling hill with like Adirondack chairs and a huge wraparound porch, wooden porch, completely by myself. I had some beer. I had some, very likely maybe La Vermontois, but I was probably drinking a Hill Farm beer,
Or maybe some King Julius.
I was drinking some King Julius. It was great. I remember the sun was blaring, and to shade myself from it, I put the glass up in front of me just so none would come through. and
Doug's gonna be big now at this.
Totally by myself, drinking a great farmhouse ale in the place where it was from. Literally, but also spiritually, which I would say is the same for, what's the gentleman's name who wrote the letter? Eddie, yeah. I would say the same thing. And I had never thought about that. There are moments of kind of isolation, but those are pretty profound moments, I would say.
And I do understand like that desire with those types of beers. I drink those beers a lot. Not in that setting, unfortunately. But they are beers that you can do both with, right? Some beers are specifically for social interaction, and some beers you don't have to have social interaction for them to be great. So I understand and wish to have an experience like that. I've yet to have my... Oh, actually, I went to Hill Farmstead alone like you did. but and I had some of those experiences. Not with the saisons, though. Those were with the lagers, and actually with the hoppy beers.
Yeah,
that was one of the few places I went where I'm like, I had everything else they had to offer before the hoppy beers, because I thought I got it. I thought I already got it. I'd had Edward, 10 years ago or whatever at the first Shelton Brothers Festival, and I thought it was great, right? But it was just, the memory just curbs the edges of those things. And I had it, and I was like, oh fuck! This is pretty, pretty amazing in a way that I have no idea how this exists like this. Like I have no idea how he made this taste this way, or they made this taste this way.
Yeah.
And that was hardly ever the case. When I think I wasn't working at Pipeworks anymore, but I'd spent a lot of time dealing with hops and how to make beers taste hoppy and good and the mouthfeel of them. And then I had that beer, and you learn a lot of the tricks when you do that, right? I had that beer, and I was like, I don't know this trick. I don't have any idea how this does this. And that was a pretty, I don't think I would have fully engaged with that experience if I was like with friends trying to have a social, would be like, oh, that's really good. No, you guys, this is really, no, it's good. I know beer. This is good. But yeah, it really was like a mind-blowing experience, which I didn't think I was going to have quite that experience there, but then I did. So
yeah,
I tried to fight it, but it took me.
I didn't want to, but it just happened.
Yeah.
So here's what we're going to do. We're going to take another very quick break because I'm going to pre-read this one, and then we'll come back and read.
Welcome back to the Beer Temple Podcast. It's Chris and Mike again.
Yep, we're back. We took 1 minute when I said I was going to read this ahead of time, read the postcard ahead of time, and then we said, screw it. Mike, you just read it live. And then Mike started to read it, and we realized...
We found out I'm illiterate.
Found out that he's illiterate.
It took 32 years.
This is,
My mom's a reading teacher, but I snuck all my way to...
On a very special episode of the Beer Temple Podcast.
Yeah.
The gang learns.
I'm clearly the Charlie of...
Yeah. So we're redoing it, and we're going to read it again. Now we've got...
assuming this will go better.
I think it probably will. But we've got a postcard from Cincinnati, Ohio. It's what do we got on there?
It's a postcard with a very cool watercolor painting of Urban Artifact, which is in the historic St. Patrick's Church building in Cincinnati, Ohio, constructed from 1873 to 1876. That's all it says on the postcard. It's a very cool thing to get sent to us.
Yeah.
And so here goes take 2 of Mike trying to read. It's addressed to Chris and Mike and says, thanks for doing the podcast. He left Serge out, I guess. I've really been enjoying the reconcept, the historical solo session, and the beer that changed my life in particular. While I don't have a singular beer, listening has made me realize how much I appreciate beer's ability to bring me back to a particular time and place. A gumball head might remind me of, I don't know what that one is, in Hyde Park circa 2016. Being in my first date with my girlfriend. I'll always associate Swans of Lear, or really any beer with mint, with standing in front of my apartment in the evening as the world shut down, circa spring 2020. And hey, next time I have a punishingly sour beer, maybe it'll remind me of this deserted church in Cincinnati where I'm having a beer now. Hope you guys are well. And
a little bit of shade in there.
Andrew. Yeah, it might be
punishing.
shade. It might just be that I don't know what this word is. He did say punishing.
Punishingly sour beer. But he liked it enough to buy a postcard from them. So, yeah. Thanks. It was from Andrew.
Thank you very much for that. I also love the ability of those types of flavors and those things to bring you back to specific places in time.
Is that how it works for you? You can have a flavor and it takes you to a memory
Sometimes.
Like that? Huh.
It also works the other way for me, where I have a very distinct flavor experience without drinking the thing, and it brings me back just to that item. Like we were talking about.
Wait, say that again?
So like I'll have the exact way that main lunch tastes in my head, and I'll be like, I gotta have a main lunch, and so it works like both ways. Where sometimes it'll be like I'll have a thing, and it'll be like, wow, this is kind of like that time I did this thing, or I'll have this thing emerge in my brain that's a flavor. It's exactly the full flavor profile of main lunch. That one happens the most often with
lunch, really.
Which it's very weird. There are other things like Vermontois. It'll happen with that, and then I think those are the two main ones. But I'll have just for no reason that I can discern, I will have the experience of that I am currently drinking that while I'm not doing it.
So you'll just be sitting there like, man, I can practically taste this beer in my mouth right now.
Yeah.
Interesting. It doesn't work quite that way for me. Even with my favorite beers, I can't exactly remember what they are like at any given point. I can generally remember them, but my palate memory is not like that. And I don't know if I link many memories to the flavor, although I do remember the experience, and I link that to a beer or a meal or stuff like that. Like I have a lot of very fond memories of eating and drinking, but I don't quite remember exactly what it tastes like. I do recall if I said something like, "Oh, this tastes like that," I do kind of remember that and like what I was thinking and tasting at that time.
Yeah.
But I don't remember like the waves. I had like an amazing Burgundy wine, like the best wine I've ever drank. Sorry, and
You're apologizing to the wine.
sorry, no, I like this table is like kind of out of control right now. And it was just like developing and like doing stuff I've never had like any liquid do.
Totally.
And it was amazing. And I still don't, I can kind of remember that one and what it did, but not with like perfect memory. I can probably remember a lot more about like, I don't know, going on a specific brewery tour or something that than that flavor experience. My memory for that isn't that good. But then again, it must the memory of how happy and fun that was certainly stays because those are some amazing experiences.
Have you heard like Bruce Springsteen talk about like when you have a major life achievement, you got to go get ice cream or you got to do something like that because like you're not going to remember like, and this is coming from someone who's had probably a lot of amazing life experiences beyond what I can imagine. But like he's like you're not going to remember the way you felt or like tie the way you felt when like something great happened to you as much as you're going to remember having that ice cream. And so it's like the sensory experience of eating something. Or,
he's
or
like
with
you.
I mean, I don't know. I'm basically Bruce Springsteen. I think was what I was trying to get at.
Right.
But there are like
no, he's like you.
Right. Yeah. He's basically like
Bruce
me.
Springsteen is basically you.
Yes. That. I mean,
That's what you meant.
He wishes.
That's what you meant to say. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. He loves Cezanne. But there is something too like that. Melding or welding of sensory experience to the emotional state you were in that I mean everyone's had the negative experience of that, right, where like I can't drink whiskey anymore or I can't drink vodka anymore because I had a night in college, like
Sure.
right, like
That's
you
true.
remember a physical state that, or I guess that wasn't an emotional state but a physical state tied to a specific way something tasted.
Right, yeah.
And the effect it had on you.
Yeah, and it's funny because I really don't. I have it somewhat that way, but I don't. Yeah, I mean, maybe that's why getting back to the earlier email about like the best drinking experiences, like you're with someone, because that's how I remember it. Like I remember us being late at night at your place listening to vinyl of like Billy Joel vinyl or the
I had just
new
gotten The Stranger and I was really into it.
and
I love that album.
or the it's a great album.
It's a great album.
Or D'Angelo's most recent album.
And that's when I was trying to
Mac on Me.
Hell yeah.
Yeah, it worked.
Actually, I played that on
It
like my
worked.
second date with my girlfriend, who were like we lived together, and it's gone great. And I actually just genuinely like that album. Like, and this is probably proof that I just play it because it's a great album. But she had texted her friends like, Mike, he was trying to.
Right, he put on
the second date
D'Angelo.
on D'Angelo. He was trying to download I was like, oh, well, I mean, if I am, that'd be great, but no, that wasn't my intention at all. It's just like a good vibe.
Yeah,
I guess.
it's an amazing
I guess
album.
that is the same. I don't know. It's a great album.
Yeah, it's true.
Voodoo.
And no, was it Voodoo? Well, whatever.
Maybe it was Brown Sugar.
No, that was the first album. Voodoo was second. I thought we were playing the most recent, but it doesn't matter.
Black Messiah.
Yeah.
Yeah. We did that too.
Okay.
I guess I played them all.
My
for you.
point
It still
being,
hasn't worked.
The point being, not which order, which album was it of D'Angelo's, but like that's what I remember.
Yeah.
What whiskeys we had on that particular night, I don't remember. I remember you saying pick anyone you want, and I picked that one.
Yeah.
I don't remember what it tasted like.
But you remember it being like you picked the best one.
Right. I remember that, and I remember just that's such an enjoyable experience. That's what I remember.
Yeah.
And it's funny because I think people inaccurately attribute some sort of like super taster ability on me because of the videos I do, and I used to do the tastings back in the day, which the people who work here at the shop, like they know it's certainly not true. I have a trained palate. I don't think it's exceptional. I think if anything, I've practiced putting words to flavors.
Totally. I feel the same way.
That's what I have done.
Yeah.
So I can articulate things. I'm also decent at linking a flavor to something that you can commonly reference, like a memory to. Like, oh, this smells like that thing,
It's just practice, right?
Which is practice.
Yeah.
But the reality is, I mean, if you had gave me 5 beers and one of them was Two-Hearted, and you tried to trick me, you tricked me.
Yeah.
I mean,
you could give me beers I made, and I
Right.
might not even be able to pick out that. Oh, that's. I mean, now I could probably pick them out because our beers are
sure.
very distinctive and all use the same yeast. But if you get, actually, remember we did that big Pilsner tasting?
Yeah.
The only beer I was confident I knew what it was a Pipeworks beer at the time.
Right, that's true.
That's the only one where I was like, I know what that one was, which I didn't expect. But it was distinct enough from the other ones, and I had it enough times. But for most of the time, you would give me like barrel aged beers that I had worked really hard on blending there, or like, I don't know, Ninja versus Unicorn, and I would have been like, "It's good. Why are you doing this? Like, what do you want from me about this?" Like,
Yeah.
Oh yeah, of course. It's like a good batch of that.
Yeah,
The secret is like I'm a terrible connoisseur too. This is another thing with that whiskey where like I like most things. Like
Right.
I don't spend too much time on the nuances of the differences of those things if I'm not trying to make it.
Well, I do a lot of, as I mentioned earlier when we were talking about the whiskey stuff. I've been doing a lot of these tastings, and I've always kind of done these guided tastings, even if I was talking in an empty room, even way back when. And one thing that I often say to people is, this is how you evaluate beer. This is not how you drink beer. It's not the right way to do it. It's not the fun way to do it. If you want to sit and really think what's going on, you can probably take some cool stuff and kind of have a fun experience. And that's there, and I like how, if you're mindful of what's going on, that can be a fun experience.
And it can enhance your experience as part of your whole experience.
Right.
Yeah.
But it does take concentration, especially when you're first learning to do it. Then you can do it like in like little micro doses. But like going to like somewhere like BTI, it's exhausting. I don't want to do that all the time. I don't know how those guys do it. But when you see Gerald talk about something he's tasting, it is unbelievable how good.
Real super taster.
I mean, that guy, it's insane. But yeah, it's being a connoisseur is, I mean, hey, if it makes you happy, that's fine. But you're not making anybody else happy by you being a connoisseur, I don't think.
Right.
I mean, the reality is, like, I think people want to be connoisseurs, but it doesn't enhance, I guess.
If you use it to better connect with people, then there's value to it. But that's almost never how people use the skill.
Right.
Or
maybe,
the connoisseur.
You know what? Maybe we're thinking of connoisseur in the wrong way. I mean, perhaps we are connoisseurs because we can just instantly put so many beers in context with so many other beers and know which ones go to the top, and we don't even think that we're doing it that way.
Right.
We are, and we're doing it so, without real effort, because it's just it's all banked. All that stuff is banked knowledge.
Right, the algorithm we were talking about before.
Yeah.
But it's also like I think a misconception about gaining knowledge about a thing is that you're trying to like winnow away things you enjoy. It might be something that happens, but like if hopefully it makes you better appreciate more things. It might make you better appreciate them intellectually and not for the visceral like pleasure of drinking them, but gaining knowledge about something should be about broadening the things that you can appreciate, not narrowing them. And I think that's kind of the idea of connoisseurship is like, no, I only drink the best, which is like, that's not fun.
I will say, I don't know if it's just me or if this is with everyone, but there's been a lot of stuff that I've listened to, watched, consumed over my lifetime, and I can't think of a real exception of something I truly loved that I cannot still go back to today, even if I liked it as a kid, and be like, this is good. Yeah. This is good. I used to love Pee-wee's Playhouse when I was a kid. It's a good show.
Yeah.
I mean, I put it on with my kids. I was like, you know what? As far as kids shows go, that's a good kids show.
Yeah.
And it's same with records that I truly liked when I was younger, and with beers that I truly was like, this beer I like when I was first getting into it.
Yeah.
Those beers are still great.
Right.
Like Le Fin du Monde or some of the early ones. It's like, bro, that beer is awesome.
Yeah.
It's great.
It kills it.
Yeah. So
it's not something you want to have all the time.
So it isn't winnowing away what you, I think, and those things, if you are winnowing it away, it's not, you didn't truly like it. I would say maybe liked it because you thought you were supposed to like it. And then you realized, oh, that was me being a poser. Now I like this. And maybe you're being a poser now. Who knows?
Well, I do believe in the liking things because you're supposed to like them. And then sometimes you grow into those things. Like I think that's happened to me for sure. But not for all things.
But I'm saying if you find something and then if you truly like something and then truly don't like something, that doesn't really seem to happen very often. If you're being true to yourself, you either didn't really like it or you still kind of do. And one of the two, you just have to, I think, come clean with. That's more of what I was saying. Yeah. I mean, yeah. So I don't know how this is. Just what's the Andrew?
Andrew.
Yeah. I don't know how we got there from here, but got wherever. Got here from there.
I was talking about the experiences you can have drinking. Yeah.
So we had some letters, but not all letters are handwritten letters. You can also write letters electronically.
That's right.
Do you know that?
I've learned this through this show.
Yeah, it's true. There's these things called electronic letters that you send through the email.
Electronic mail.
You email e-letters.
You electronic mail them.
You electronic mail them. That's what it stands for. By the way. I don't know why they're not. They should be called e-letters. And you email them. I mean, come on.
It's fair.
So from now on, these are e-letters.
From now on, they've been this way. They've been being this way, Chris.
Exactly.
What are you talking about?
I have an e-letter from Nathan. And this is a letter. This is the first letter. Maybe not. There might have been one to like King Kona or something like that. But of the dually host era, this is a you letter, not to me.
Nice.
All right. So I'm reading this. I'm reciting it. I'm channeling Nathan on this one. And it may have gotten it a little over a month ago. But I apologize for that.
We're trying our best, people.
Yeah. Okay. So here it goes. Dear Mike, I just listened to the podcast with Avery Swanson and simply wanted to thank you for your wide-ranging, honest, and heartfelt conversation. I can't imagine. I can only imagine what that was about.
You haven't listened to it?
I didn't listen to that episode, no. I don't listen to the show usually.
Yeah, I've started listening just to make sure I'm not doing a real bad job.
Yeah, but I think I was joking about you two about how
It was a podcast about feelings and colors.
Yeah, it's like, what do you, I mean, if you had to put a smell to a star, what would it be? Anyway.
Sulfur.
Exactly. Anyway, I have enjoyed your candor as a recurring member of the original Insiders podcast in your new role as co-host in the current iteration of the Beer Temple podcast. Shout out to Chris, too. In your recent conversation, I was especially struck by your openness about the feelings that led you to leave Pipeworks and your current struggles with where is at this stage in its life, and your feelings about the project not being, quote unquote, off the ground yet. At the risk of opening a fresh wound, I hope that Forklift is up and running again and you are able to get your Oktoberfest in package. As a person who is struggling with where they are professionally, I draw a lot of inspiration from your words. I think the last time I was in Chicago was shortly before you launched ISWAS, so I look forward to trying some of the product of your labors the next time I'm able to visit. Good health and all the success with the brewery and the podcast. P.S. Have you tried anything from Fair Isle in Seattle? I've been enjoying their beers a lot recently. Sincerely, Nathan.
Well, thank you, Nathan. The housekeeping, yes, the forklift got fixed, or it didn't get fixed. They got a new forklift, and we were able to package that Oktoberfest, and it is currently available in the Chicagoland area. It's called Welcome to Guardsville.
Yes.
I haven't had any Fair Isle yet, but apparently that guy is from Chicago, or like one of the brewers lived in Chicago. And I've DM'd with him on Instagram, and he was going to bring us some beers pre-pandemic, but then he.
What does he do?
What does he do?
It's
a Saison brewery.
Saison brewery.
Yeah. All the beers look fantastic. I've only heard great things. And he was going to bring some pre-pandemic, but obviously travel was, or maybe it was very early pandemic we were talking. But I hope to have some of them soon. But yeah, thank you very much for that.
Yeah, so with this email, I think it's e-letter. I think
that was sent via the email.
That was sent via email by an e-postal carrier.
Pony E Express.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, Pony E Express. This has definitely something. It has come up in that maybe you have not known about, Mike, but it is messed up for me to think about that. Yeah, people do draw inspiration or enjoyment, at least, if not inspiration, from some of these shows. And I think this show has always been kind of getting... it's always tried to be real, right, is what we're trying to do with this show. And talk about what's actually going on. What are we talking about? I mean, the reality is, especially in the Insiders Roundtable, there's just stuff that people realistically, the cost benefit of them saying something at some times just isn't there.
Right.
Which I will say is also real. Because you are really in those conversations with people in the industry where they can't say certain things to you. So that it's not all bets are off. But there's definitely stuff that's said off mic that is not said on mic. Because it's just, I think sometimes because people are pussies, and I think sometimes because it's just truly. It's really not worth it to say things, but
right.
Sorry, go on.
No,
go on.
I mean, it's just there's the reality of sometimes the reality of those things is not always positive.
True, and the saying it doesn't matter. Like I know sometimes, especially the writers who come on, like Josh Noel, Andy Crouch, they always want you to like name names and stuff like that. And some point,
right?
Like at first I was like, I'm wimping out by not saying the name. And then later on I was thinking like the name isn't always important. If you're like, there's this one brewery and they suck and they're doing like, then that's one thing. But if it's like, there's breweries around today who are doing this and that, and someone's like, no, name one. It's like, is it really important that I call out a local brewery about something that is a trend right now?
And most
it's
of
like
the things we're talking about are well-intentioned, right? If there was someone who was a nefarious bad actor hurting people, like it would be a different story.
There's one instance where we've gone he who should not be named style on this show. There's one time.
Right. That was a threat of legal action, I meant. If we're thinking of the same instance.
Right. I mean, bogus threats, but,
of course, but
whatever.
The threat was still there.
No. The threat was, I don't want to get into that
when we're talking about like...
Not because I'm not afraid to talk of it, though, because that's not what we're talking about right now.
But when it's like, there's too many people making too many of the same styles of IPA. Like, what benefit is there going to be to saying this is a brewery I think might be doing that right now?
Yeah.
And this also isn't. I don't want to pull the veil back too much. This isn't a journalistic show. This is a show about us having conversations we would really have, and in our real conversations, maybe we would mention a brewery, but that's not what the conversation's about.
Right.
That's not the essence of the conversation, and it's not the important part of the conversation. And if we're having a private conversation, we can't hinder that person's ability to have a financial gain in the market. So you weigh all those things.
Right. Totally. Absolutely. And I think we've done a pretty good job.
And even when there's someone or some brewery who's like, not doing exactly what I would do with a brewery, most of the time we still like those people a lot. Yeah. And we still like their approach. And we still like that they exist in the world. So to single anyone out would actually be counter to the idea of that most of those conversations we're having, right? Often. Where the conversations where it's like, name a brewery that's doing that. It's not about a single brewery doing it. It's about just generally this is happening in this industry.
Sure. And we're doing a little bit of an aside. But no, I think it's worth. I mean, I'll go down. If there's a rabbit hole, I'll go down it. You know me. But
we're good together.
But
chase that white rabbit.
I will say, like, when it does become annoying a little bit is when it's about topics and people are afraid to have opinions. If we're talking about, let me just pick like an easy one that I've talked about a lot, like seltzers or something like that, and someone's like, just very wishy-washy. Like, either don't be afraid to say that you hate them, or don't be afraid to say, I don't care what you guys are saying, I love them.
Sure.
Like, just say it. Like, it's all good. And by the way, not that I don't hate seltzer, by the way. I mean, I don't necessarily think it's always, we'll save it for another topic, but I don't know how good I think it is for beer.
You can have a nuanced opinion on it, right? And I think you do, and you have an understanding of, like, you don't want to drink them. It's probably not the best thing for the cultural importance of what we believe craft beer is.
Yeah.
But we also understand that some of our our friends that have breweries have extra tank space, and like this will sell fast, or this and you can be of multiple minds of these things, right? Where I'm one part consumer, I'm one part producer, I'm one part commentator, and all of those those ideas in me have different levels of belief on certain things. So I can believe two different things at the same time and hold them both in my head. I can believe that I don't like the direction that cider, for example, would take, but I can also understand why people would make it and not think it's an evil, bad thing to do.
100%. Totally agree with that.
And that's what that email was about.
Well, no. My whole point. So, let me just do a very quick recap. So I was saying this show has tried to be truthful. I think being real is something that's always been important to me about this show. But I think you bring your brand of real is just a little bit different than mine.
Sure.
And I think that's what this is getting to. And I think it's very appropriate that it's written to you because I think, as I almost burp into the mic, very poignant when I do that. That I hope you see that as validation because off mic, not very often, but sometimes I tease you about what do the stars smell like and
Sure.
stuff like that.
I mean, I think
all in good fun.
I think you think it more than you actually say it to me. I can't think of a single time you've actually teased me about it in a way that I thought was any sort of real ribbing.
Oh, of course.
It's you know who I am at this point.
Right, exactly.
And I think it's
maybe you're just better at articulating it, or that comes out easier. Maybe that just doesn't come out as easy.
It's just more top of mind for me, but I think it's part of the beauty of what this is and why we can do a podcast as long as that we usually end up at almost the same place.
Yeah.
And we just try to describe how we got there.
Yeah. That's true. Maybe I should try to do that more and get more in touch with how I feel about things. I'm just not very good at, I think, knowing what that is and articulating it and stuff like that. But anyway, yeah. I thought that was, yeah. What were you going to say?
It's just it was a wonderful letter, but yeah, I mean, it's my natural state. It's my natural interaction with people, and I think that's why part of why I think this, I don't know, relaunch or whatever we've been doing has been really fun for me, at least, is that I always got a little entry point when we were doing the round table when I would come on very often, but having the ability to coax out of people kind of the way that I see the world that differs from you, but gets to the same place has been pretty rewarding and fun.
Thank you.
Those are the ones I definitely can't listen to because
cringe.
I don't know what stars actually smell like, and and those things change, right? I have to answer the question in the moment, and then I'll be like, oh, I guess it doesn't taste like sulfur or smell like sulfur anymore.
We've got some. We're running out of time, but I thought we could maybe knock out a few
quick hitters.
Quick hitters, yeah. We have one to me and you.
Oh.
And this is from Eric. And
Catherine?
No, not Buster. I would have given it by his chosen name if it was Buster. No, it's to you and I. Hi, Mike and Chris. Love the solo episode, Chris. It was spot on, insightful, and entertaining. I will say thank you, guys. I asked for feedback about that, and I've gotten a lot, about as much as we've gotten about anything. So, thank you. It was interesting to do, and I'm glad you guys liked it. And I've got another historical one that I want to do. I've got two. We're going to do one on pale ale, and we're going to do one on stout. And I've been talking to Mike Siegel about having him come in for some of those because I think he would be really good for anything English and history. You know? Yeah. So thank you for that. So Eric goes on to E-Write. Okay, cool. I'd be very interested to hear a roundtable on the value of marketing in craft beer, especially if you compare what you're doing to area brewers, to suburbs-based bottle shops and breweries. Thanks for the countless hours of entertainment. And if you ever do a Patreon, count me in. We've talked about that, but I'm too There's no way I could keep up with some sort of value add. We've talked about exactly what to do.
We've talked about it, but also we
I
always
can't
want
do
to
it.
fall back on free shows.
Exactly. So sincerely, Eric is what he said. We've been talking about doing a special marketing show
Yeah.
for probably 3 fucking years.
Yeah.
So we haven't done it yet.
I think now's the time.
Maybe longer.
Now is definitely the time, right? Like,
We're going to have like artists. We're going to have Phineas. When's the last time? When did he work for Half Acre? I mean,
I don't know.
You know, we're going to have him. I wanted to have Carl from Omnipollo. Kate was one of the people who really wanted to do the show and just talk about like marketing and the art of marketing and art.
Yeah.
Not necessarily the art of marketing and all that sort of stuff.
Yeah.
But
I mean, that's still a
Oh
thing
my
we can
gosh.
do. I mean, Doug, Kate,
yeah, well, Doug was a seep.
Edmar.
He was. I don't even know if he was at Rev at the time.
right? But now he's the head of marketing,
I know.
so
I know.
got to make him do it.
Yeah, have him do the cybermetrics of marketing.
Yeah, his galaxy brain of marketing and
Exactly.
and TikToks and how it all works together, and tell us exactly what we can do. That's absolutely something we have to do now.
Yes.
We've been called out
Yes.
by Carl. Is that right, Carl?
Eric.
Eric was the last one, Carl.
No.
No.
Last one was Andrew. Or no.
You mentioned Carl. There's a lot of names that I've been throwing
Carl
around.
from Omnipollo, the
Omnipollo.
artist there. Carl Granson, something. Welcome back to the Beer Temple podcast. I'm Chris. I'm here with Mike, and why don't we do one last e-letter that was emailed to us from somebody who sent us an actual letter, right?
Yeah.
This is from Jack from Glen Ellen.
Listening to the archives.
Listening to
digging in.
Exactly. So he wrote a little while back. We read his letter on the air, and he wrote us an e-letter. And now he's saying,
Thank you, Jack.
"Yeah, hey Chris and Mike," and is italicized, bolded, and underlined. So it's Chris and Mike.
All right.
Yeah.
I'm not sure how to interpret that.
Yeah, he says, "Thanks for reading my letter on air. Great to engage with the show in some fashion. Sorry for the
'Cause
snub,
he wrote-
Mike.
He wrote the last one, dude.
I've been listening to the quote-unquote classic episodes,
I'm sorry, Jack.
and that affected the greeting, I suppose. Now, I will say I am going to, on the fly, edit this a little bit. It's okay. There's just some personal stuff, like phone numbers. I don't think he wants me to read your phone number, his phone number out.
Social Security number?
Yes.
Yeah.
I think the book club is a great idea. When I first started to get into beer, I was inundated with poor quality beer books by well-meaning family members for every holiday. Been there.
Yeah.
Most of these books were essentially lists of beers you must try before you die. I don't have to explain to y'all why that concept is a joke, but it can be pretty confusing to a new drinker. So, beer book or movie recommendations would be heavily valued.
I was thinking about movies.
It would be great for this book club to serve as a platform to get into other areas of the industry that may be a bit trickier in your other show formats. I'm sorry, did I interrupt you? Did you want to talk about
I was
movies?
thinking about, I was thinking about like we should review or we should talk about beer movies, but there just aren't
There aren't any good ones.
ones.
There's no good ones.
Or shows, but and like I don't want to watch like
Cheers?
Brew Brothers and be like, look at how stupid this show is. Like,
Cheers is the best beer show ever.
there's some rancid beer pours on that show.
Oh, but that's not about that. That's more about like, bar
That was a-
culture
that
and
was a
everything.
joke.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. I can be dense.
I can be obtuse.
It would be great for this book club to serve as a platform to get into other areas of the industry that may be a bit trickier in your other show formats. With the structure of a pre-existing narrative, deeper dive discussions can get muddied in details. It would be great to engage with an author of beer history or yeast science or something similar within the context of a book that we have all read. That way you can assume some baseline understanding and really dig deep. I'm not sure what these imaginary books would be, just an idea. I also like the idea of exploring roles within the industry that are not discussed often. I know the beer buyer from my local bottle shop, but did not think much about the balancing act that he has to live as part of his job. I'm sure there are other roles that industry folks take for granted that would be interesting to dive into. So kudos to you for coming up with that idea, Mike.
I gotta be honest, I don't remember coming up with that idea or it being my idea.
The beer buyer show?
Yeah.
It totally 100% was.
All right. Well,
100%.
When you said that, I was like, oh, I guess it was. Sure.
Yeah.
I just think these as our ideas, Chris. We're a team.
There you go. He's saying maybe something on the distribution side. Good luck. Or non-brewer, non-rep roles at breweries. Also, that's super. Now that one could actually work. I mean, distribution side, that's tough because they just don't talk.
I think like taproom manager or that type of thing.
You get like Tater in here and see if like he'll just open up.
Well, we don't want to mess with Tater's life though.
True. Oh, right, because now he's back in the
He was in Wisconsin.
It's true. Thank you for this show and the time you have invested in it. At this point, I'm pretty sure I've literally consumed weeks of content for free. That was me. I added that. That wasn't him. Thanks, Jack from Glen Ellen. So the reason I wanted to put that in there is because I did want to mention, and thank you, Jack, that I've been getting some feedback about this book club.
And we got to actually schedule the book.
You have to actually schedule the book club. You have to have Moj Dog come in.
Yeah.
Which he's been on the show before. He'd do it, I bet.
I think it's a great idea.
Yeah. So let's talk about it. Let's talk about that a little bit.
Yeah. The idea is just to have a interactive book club where we don't do this live, obviously, but to announce ahead of time a book we'll all be reading, and that we will talk to the author of and have people send in questions, and then we'll talk to that person, and then kind of also do a how did this affect beer culture and this is the way that people think about beer, I guess, because the books, I think there's enough books that exist at this point that we can have a conversation about topics in the book and then how it's changed the way that people have made beer or consumed beer. Yeah. So to kind of try to do a show with some maybe once a quarter, not super often, because this is going to be more of a planning of a show and more lift on the listeners' end too, to send some questions in, because we'll have questions, but this shit is also going to be about getting ideas from people and what they want to know about these books.
So the first book is going to be, we want it to be Tasting Beer by Randy Mosher. I still think the best concise course on beer
it's the perfect
there
introduction.
It's so visual. It's so well put together.
It's still relevant.
Yes.
It was the first book about it, and it's the only book that's going to be about how you approach a beer in the kind of more academic way we were talking about.
Beer Bible from Jeff Allworth is also good.
Yeah.
That has a new version out. He's doing a little book tour now, but Randy Mosher's, I think, is the best. And it goes into it's just, I still remember reading it, and there's things that I refer to and talk about on my little talks that I do about beer that are directly because Randy Mosher put something visually that I just had not understood until he put it into a visual. The whole BU to GU ratio that Ray Daniels first kind of put into writing, as far as I know, which is essentially perceived bitterness. He put it in a visual style and put different beers on that chart, and you're like, amazing. That beer is not as bitter as that beer, but you perceive it as more bitter. And it's like, and here's why, because it's sweeter. Even though it is, you perceive it as more, it's less sweet. So even though it's technically less bitter, because bitter is a measurable, there's a measurable amount of bitterness, and you can have so much sugar in a beer that it'll be the sweetest thing you've ever tasted. It will be also sky high in bitterness. If there's enough sugar, you just will not taste that bitterness.
Right. And then like, there's this specific conversation, like how acid works with that, and how sweetness works with that, and how all these other things can like affect the bitterness of things. And
right. And that's just one little like graph in the book I'm talking about. But also not a dense book. This is an easy, fun read. Yeah.
It's also like I haven't read that book in probably 8 years.
Yeah.
And so us revisiting those books to make sure we're not asking dumb questions of people is part of the motivation of this exercise.
I mean, we did have this is a letter show, so why don't you send us letters about tasting beer, or come and grab it. We'll set a date. We have to set a date, and it has to be at least 2 or 3 weeks out into the future.
Will you email Randy?
Someone did. You were supposed to, but I will.
I don't even have his email. What are you talking about?
I will, and I will email him. And we have had somebody already come by the shop and pick up the book, by the way, because I have some books. If you want a book, we did a book signing with him a long time ago, and I still have some extras. So if you want to swing by for a book, I will hook you up with a tasting beer book. It's edition 1. There is an edition 2. This is edition 1. Right. But yeah, you said shh.
That's not. Well, yeah, I had an idea, but we shouldn't do it on air.
Oh, one of those things.
Yeah, it's a lot. It's much more of a lift.
Don't say that on the air. Please don't say that on the air.
Commit ourselves to some stuff we can't figure out.
So, any questions you have for Randy? Any questions you have for us to ask Randy? Anything like that goes with tasting beer? Let us know. Also, if there's other books out there that you are interested in, let us know about that. There's a few that we're very interested to discuss. But, you guys definitely would, if we got, I would say if we got 2 letters about a book, there's a 100% chance that it would go on the list. So, we don't get that many letters. So, yeah, I wanted to just put that out there again, talk about the book club again, because the idea was we were supposed to talk about it every single show.
Right. Well, we were supposed to set the date and then talk about every single show, and we just haven't.
Right.
We both live other lives, and we make a free podcast on Tuesdays. So, but I think this is a good idea. It's got legs. People have been telling us it's a good idea. So let's commit to this.
Committed. But that's why I wanted to end it. With that letter. So
love it.
Keep sending the letters in. There were some emails we didn't get to. We have now read all of our written letters as far as I know. I have a little folder that I have, I think, all the written letters that have ever been sent. I probably should have grabbed it for the show, but
we should frame them in Studio BT.
Right. But I believe I have every handwritten letter, hand-typed letter ever, I think.
It's pretty awesome.
Yeah, I think. I'm saying it, and I hope it's true. So thank you guys so much for sending that stuff in. It's insane to me that you guys have taken the time, and I mean that in a good way,
right?
To take the time and do this. And yeah, thank you so much for doing so. Anything you want to say, Mike, before we head on out?
Not really. No, thank you. Just thank you for listening and for caring enough to handwrite or send email or electronic letters via the email. It really means a lot, and hearing that you like what we're doing is pretty great. But also, tell us when And we're not doing a good job. If we do some sort of format that isn't good, please tell us that as well.
Yeah, that's a good point. Like, if there are shows, if you've come back and listened, but there were shows where, or there are regular shows where, when you guys start getting into this, I just like skip ahead, or I just wait for the next show to come out, or stuff like that. There's podcasts that I do that with. So like,
Same.
So just let us know. And again, if we get 2 of them, we'll probably stop doing it. So it's not that high of a bar to
We're
cross.
very sensitive.
So you're 50% of the way there. That said, there are exceptions. For example, we definitely got hate about Zombie Dust Radio Hour, King Kona, stuff like that. Was just gonna
fuck off.
Yeah, just gonna keep doing it. King Kona. I was just gonna, keep doing it. I decided when it run its course.
Part of that hate is also that it's funny and that
Exactly.
it's like good. Like,
What is this?
if you're having a response to it, then it's doing its job.
Also, for me, there would be like, if someone said they hated it, someone always also said they loved it.
Yeah. Right.
So I was like, all right, you're out there too. That's cool. And that's also when it's great to fall back on. It's a free show.
Yeah. We should bring more bits back.
Right.
Not as many bits on this show.
There aren't as many bits. Yeah, no, it's true. Well, but that really is good. The beauty of the bits was when you'd have a round table and the certain characters would happen to be there, and then it would just, it would happen. I mean, that's how the Dust Brothers came about. That's how the King Kona and all that stuff came about. Yep.
Yeah.
And it was just, there were just people there, and this stuff happened. So we have to do more of those round tables, even to a smaller degree, like riding the Green Dragon or whatever that Brian Kirby was he was called like smoking pot, riding the Green. I forget.
I don't
what he
remember
said.
that one.
Anyway, maybe that was just in my mind. I was probably riding the Green Dragon. Thank you guys. We will see you next week. We're going to do a round table next week, I believe, probably.
Sounds great.
Or you were also, well, we'll see what we do next week. We have a couple ideas out there.
We'll do whatever we want.
We'll do whatever we want, and it's free. Don't forget, free. Goodbye.
Remember this is what we wanted. Remember this is what we said. To never be heard, seen from again. Remember this is what we wanted. Remember this is what we said. To never be heard, seen from again.